subscribe. Hello, it's me. I made a build. I like it a lot. It's pretty strong, very fun to play. Lots of AoE, lots of explodey. Zoom zoom, goes boom boom, you know, heralds. Yep. It makes it so much easier. Boom. Hey, yo! First things first, the core interactions of the build. It is built around Shattershard Shield, which shatters, exploding in a big AoE when you block. Now, this deals physical spell damage, scaling off of the quality of the shield. So the more quality, the better. But it does introduce a 4-second duration of you cannot block. That's built into the shield, which makes it quite bad, honestly. But then this new unique, the Monastery Bell, bypasses that 4-second downtime by allowing you to hit with the shield skill, and that hit, the first hit, will count as a blocking hit, which means that you will explode the shield every time you hit with a shield skill. Right, so the faster you can attack, the more times you will explode the shield, and the more damage you will do. Shield Charge has the lowest attack time, so it's best for single target damage. Also, it's a movement skill, so it's just a nice double dipping situation. We go for faster attacks, momentum, and inspiration, because, well, inspiration is needed once you go into Foulborn Headhunter with Soul Eater stacks. We cannot sustain the shield charge cost, especially not at level 20. The mana cost just goes a little bit too high. So check in inspiration, keep the shield charge at level 4. This is to min-max the movement speed gain per mana cost. This is basically a level 1 mana cost. And I do have a normal Headhunter, which I would recommend swapping for the build when you're doing something like Legions, when you're doing rare monster modifier stacking setups into your 17s or 16s or whatever. Then it's actually better because it's not just attack speed, it's a lot more juice. Now for the links in the weapon, or the shield I should say, this is our damage weapon, but it's a shield. But anyway, so Awaken Control Destruction. This is really nice for this because less critical strike chance doesn't do anything since we don't have any base critical strike chance to begin with. So it's just 44% more damage with a nerve on hit. Very, very nice. We have Cold Penetration because we're going for Fist converted to cold. Obviously, you know, you get the freezes, the shatters sounds if you're playing with sounds, which I usually don't, but you get the juice. However, this is a non-crit build, so you do need to get some chance to freeze. So bear that in mind. Now for this support gem, Arcane Surge, this is the second best support gem. It gives 35% more spell damage while you have Arcane Surge. But the skill from the shield doesn't cost any mana, so you cannot proc this support gem with the skill itself. You need an outside source for that, which you can just have Arcane Surge level 1 support linked to your Elemental Weakness and Frostblink and just forget about it because you're just playing the build and you have it up. Don't really have to worry about it too much. There is an option to go for some cracked double implicit or triple implicit synthesized ring. I have this one. I spent way too much gambling trying to get it to a good state, and this is usable, but whatever. You can then drop Arcane Surge support for Bone Chill, which is another roughly, I don't think it's even 10% more damage, but let's just say it's roughly 10% more damage if you do that. But just Onslaught on hit ring instead of some cracked double implicit Arcane Surge Onslaught. These don't really exist, so there's another reason why I don't recommend it. I just go for cheap 530C rings, Onslaught on hit, get some Herald debuff effect for Purity, ideally. Fist damage reduction is very nice. You could also go for damage, physical damage while affected by Herald of Purity. The Herald of Ash is acceptable if you really have to. Also, the All Herald Ring, that gives all resistance. So if you could get it on that base, and Herald of Purity buff effect, that would be ideal. For reservations, we have Hatred. We're going for Fist converted to cold. This is very nice. That's a lot of damage since we have like 8,500 baseline average hit from the Shatter Shield with quality. That's with 20 quality. The Hatred is, you know, like it's a lot of damage and it opens up some cool Watcher's Eye scenarios, situations, which I will mention later. Determination, also, I mean, just armor. Since we don't have any avoidance layers, we can't go for block. Evasion doesn't really make sense. You can, but then you're squishy to physical damage, so I prefer Determination, especially early on I was doing Shaper of Flames, which is, you know, makes the armor more effective if your physical hit is smaller that you take. But also Determinations opens up some cool Witcher's Eyes defensively. You can go for physical damage reduction while affected by Determination, or what I'm doing right now is reduced damage taken from critical strikes. This is arguably a lot stronger if you get a good roll on it, especially. But then we have the Holy Trinity, as I like to call it. The 3 Heralds for any physical hit-based build. These are omega juicy, especially if you scale the Herald buff effect. So Herald of Ash, Physics Extra Fire. We're not a fire build, but we are a physical-based build, which is great value. Herald of Purity, more physical damage. Scale the buff effect. Very nice. Lost Unity. Now this is the new unique. That gives us 3% more damage for everything and anything per Herald affecting you. We have 3 Heralds, that's 9% more damage, but we scale the buff effect to the point where this is giving us 27% more damage. So just to quickly show you why we do that or how we get that, is we are tattooing every single intelligence node into something useful, and for the most part it's just effect of Herald buffs on you. I have some resistance fixing situations going on here. I also have the reduced extra damage taken from critical strikes to pair with my Watcher's Eye to get even more mitigation against crits. But for the most part, I'm aiming at around 200, or rather at least 200 Herald buff effect increase, which this ascendancy helps a lot with. We get a lot of mana reservation for Heralds, so it makes the mana reservation situation a lot more manageable. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but right, Elementalist, the Golems, I don't think I really need to expand much here. It gives damage, AoE, defense, accuracy, AoE. Did I mention AoE? Also, it gives AoE, but it's just really good. And then, in the end game, you can stack Primordial Bonds for damage and buff effect for even more AoE. Quick interception from a post-production check, so I forgot to mention about golems. The main thing that I wanted to say is that you want to 6-link your body armor for your golems, and you want to link them to meat shield. That helps a lot for their survivability, especially in like juicy maps with delirium and whatnot. Because these golems give you buffs, right? They give you defense, the damage, everything, so you want to keep them alive. And then carrying a golem, you don't really care about it. It is a little bit more damage when you have it. It has a little bit less damage when you don't have it. But it's less important if it is alive or not. So just put it somewhere where you have an empty socket, and that's fine. Also, one more thing to note. I don't know, like if you know, if you don't. Summon Cairn Golems of the Hordes, right? You get the ability to cast more of them. So if you have the helmet that doubles the golem count, you cast 4 of them. If you don't have the helmet, you cast 2 of them, and then fill up the rest slots with your buff golems. Don't ask, just trust. Okay, bye. So that's the idea. And then I'm going for just these nodes, which is a lot of damage on single target, and then also a lot of AoE for mapping. This is ideal. This is very nice. You don't need to go here. You can do any of the ascendancies, but this is like AoE. I want the AoE, and it works, and it's great, and it's good. The next thing that is important to mention is the mana reservation. So currently in the end game, I have a setup like this. I am grabbing these 2 points just to get this 8% mana reservation. Then I am picking up these points. And then I also have a Megalomaniac with Uncompromising for Determination Reservation Efficiency. This could be Hatred Reservation Efficiency, but those were very expensive, and this one was just slightly more expensive than a baseline Primordial Bond Megalomaniac, so I just got that. Now, you have some other options, like for example, you can take this Mastery, but then you have to drop some points to get it, right? You can also get a Timeless Jewel that gives you 12% reservation for 2 points, which is, well, probably better than that other option. And then the least point consumption is a Runegraft of Treachery. However, this will make the monsters a little bit more scary, like especially big bosses that have a lot of physical base damage. 52 physical as extra cold is nothing to laugh about, right? But that would solve your situation, and it's playable, at least until you can get better solutions for it. Now, as you can see, I am a Petrified Blood low life setup for the Pain Attunement. This is very, very good. To optimize the reservation on your life, you need a few things. So first of all, you need Enlighten 4. I'm running Petrified Blood, Arrogance, Enlighten 4. You don't need level 21 Arrogance, but you don't need it. It doesn't change anything. 20, 21, but you want the 20. And then Enlighten 4, you need to pair that with any jewels, but 2 jewels that have Reservation, Efficiency of Skills, Corruption. This affects the mana and the life, right? And you need 2 of them. I have a large cluster that I corrupted myself, and then I also have the Light of Meaning. These are pretty cheap if we check now. Well, maybe someone also made something about that. You can do Primordial Eminence with it as well, especially while you're not running all clusters filled with Primordial Bonds. You can do that. I actually don't need that anymore, but I still need more levels. I'm level 98. I need level 100 for another Primordial Bond setup, and then I'll drop this one for more juice, more AoE and everything. So, yeah. Now, you're probably wondering, what the hell is this? You said the skill doesn't have crit chance. Well, that is correct. However, in the very end game, I would recommend going for something like this for the Watcher's Eye. You get baseline critical strike chance, the damage reduction option for determination, either this one or percent physical damage reduction, and then hatred penetration. That's a very nice combo. I bought this for 29 divines. Seemed very much worth it to me. And then that opens up the possibility of going Elemental Overload. Now, yes, I am running Awaken Control Destruction, which is 80% less critical strike chance. And as you can see, my crit chance is basically 1%, right? But we are triggering a lot of times per second, and it lasts for 8 seconds. It is noticeable. Like, listen. The build is good without it. The build is insanely good with it. So when it procs, your hits become so chunky, like it's noticeable. Not sometimes, but when, rather when it procs, it's really good. For 3 points, that is very efficient in terms of damage, and the uptime is good. You can't really see it because there's no skill to put on your skill bar to see whether it procced it or not, but you can see in terms of damage. Anyway, that's a lot of yapping about this. I wouldn't recommend going for this until like the very late stages of the build. The build will be performing just fine without this. This is a little bit of PB warrioring, I guess you could say. I don't agree with that. It is legit 8 seconds when I proc 15 times per second. It's gonna be up there. Anyway, what else do I need to talk about? Clusters. You can get tier 1 resistances on Primordial Bonds. You don't want 3 notables. You just want 2 where Primordial Bond is in the front, and then you get as many resistance points from these as you can. Also, medium cluster jewels. So I was trying to get as much of AoE as possible. I have Towering Threat and Assert Dominance with AoE suffix, and I crafted a lot of these jewels to get to this point. I still bought one of them because I just couldn't hit it. But then I POB'd more and more, and you don't need them until like absolutely min-maxed. And even then you need tier 1s, not tier 2s. So just get double resistance. Double resistance will help you out a lot with resistance capping, and then you probably don't even need to tattoo your tree for resistances, which I have a little bit of fire res here, a little bit of lightning res here, and then gold res on the dexterity node. As for the jewels that I'm using for the build, besides the Primordial Bond, there's one Megalomaniac that I really want, and that is Rote Reinforcements. So this is interesting. I wasn't aware at the beginning that that's how it works, but it's the same thing as with the shield. With this weapon, whenever I hit something with my shield skills, I count as blocking, which means that chance to gain a charge on block does work. There's another one which has 20 or 30% chance to gain endurance charge when you block, but this one has life, so this one's just better. And then pair that with Assert Dominance if you can for more AoE. Then another jewel that is very strong for this is the Balance of Terror. Lots of physics extra if you cast Elemental Weakness, and we want Elemental Weakness anyway because we're doing purely cold, or rather primarily cold, but also a lot of fire because of Herald of Ash. And now this one also sometimes gives lightning, which if you have chance to ignite, or rather, sorry. If you have chance to shock from something, then you get roughly 10% increased damage taken because you get around 10% shock on big bosses. The next thing, the Watcher's Eye, already mentioned that. We have Light of Meaning. In this spot, it's pretty efficient. This is like 7 or 8% more damage in the end game where you already have Megalomaniacs. So when you don't have Megalomaniacs, this is even more valuable since you have less increased damage. Just filling up Primordial Eminence jewels. If you have a jewel socket, put a Primordial Eminence in it. That's the idea here. I suppose I could quickly talk through the POB, my official POB, official POB. So I've been running with the Divine Shield for the most part, but then one map just recently, I took some altars where I didn't have my armor. I had like less than 2k energy shield, and I'm like, hello, what is happening? And then I realized that this is stopping me from recovering. But how did I get from 26 to less than 2000? And I have a flask, so from 33 to 2k, not sure. I never seen that being an issue before. So this is a nice like energy shield recoup, but if you really don't need to, you can drop it. I know some people chose to go for Zealot's Oath, but then you need a life flask. It is playable. I never took Zealot's Oath. I think I would prefer Cinder Swallow Urn with energy shield on kill for mapping. And then we have some energy shield leech here, and we don't have life leech unless we have a Ziri's Promise active. Then we get chaos damage leech as life, and we have some chaos damage from the flask. What else? Right. So progression of the build. So this is the endgame setup, which is not fully min-maxed. We have mid-game with a Void Shock and mid-game without a Void Shock. Mid-game without a Void Shock can be a little bit different. It's closer to the setup that I'm running right now. So basically, you just go for the jewel, the Timeless Jewel here with Frenzy on hit. You just need one notable here. But if you are going for the Avoid Shock, then you can go Inspired Learning here, and then do Frenzy on hit, Avoid Being Shocked, Timeless Jewel here. And then you add the Stormshroud Jewel, and then you get boots with Avoid all elemental ailments implicit. That is enough to get you to full ailment immunity. It's a tiny bit less damage, but if you really want ailment immunity, you can do that. I didn't do ailment immunity, but I did this kind of a setup with Inspired Learning, Timeless Jewel. I did it slightly different, but I would recommend doing it like this. Basically add Small Cluster Jewel for Reservation stuff, which makes the Reservation situation a lot easier. And you could also alternatively just get Reservation efficiency on a Timeless Jewel, and then you open up a Jewel socket here. But just for the purpose of like mass reproduction of the build, you know, those jewels can run out with efficient nodes to path to, so this is it's fine. Like, this is totally fine. The same amount of points, just slightly worse, but also not really, because you get resistances on the suffix here, and so it's fine. It's fine. This is totally legit. This is totally fine. Before I go into the early game, like, what's the difference between the end game and the mid game, even if it's a Void Shock? So in the end game, how I get my ailment immunity, I go for a Veiled Prefix on my body armor, and then I go for Perfect Implicit on the boots, plus Essence Avoid elemental ailments on the boots. That's how I go to 100%, and I don't have to sacrifice anything except for some monies. And then what else is different? Glove. So in the end game, I have Fractured Temple mod that we craft then with the Essence of Insanity for tier 1 accuracy on the suffixes with more attack speed, temple mod, and accuracy. And then for the prefixes, I wouldn't recommend doing what I did. I would recommend just doing the Beastcraft for suffixes cannot be changed, right? Like, and then do a Veiled Chaos Orb. And then you settle for either Fist Converted to Cold or Unveiled AoE. And then you Exalt Slam trying to get life. And then you just settle for as much as you can afford. I personally have these gloves, which are amazing, but they cost me over 50 divines because I got insanely unlucky with the rerolling, reforging life. I had to spend 40 divines just to get tier 1 life once. What? Anyway, so I would recommend settling and doing it the other way, right? If you get a veiled convert mod, you need less conversion on the implicits, and then you just craft AoE, which is a little bit less AoE, which doesn't matter until the very, very end game. But I had to go for, again, a perfect implicit to convert fully. I had to get 35 on the implicit and then 25 crafted cold. But this does open up the possibility of divining up to 16% AoE and then getting synth implicits and some other shenanigans to push for 5.0 explode radius. So if you want to push that as well at some point, then just know that veiled AoE is very, very good as well. It just needs more investment. I suppose I could mention the easiest way to get this body armor is to recombine it, because otherwise it can be very expensive. So that's how I got mine. I did recombine. There are some tricks, I guess. Well, I also need to recraft it on a perfect base because mine is not on a sacred. Mine is on a paladin's hoobrick. They look similar, so I didn't even realize that I'm making that mistake. I just got an item from the tree and I recombined it and I hit it the first try, and good things happened and it's good. But yeah, the source of our explode is Oriath's End. So I was playing for the longest time with 26% chance to explode. As you can see, it is still that in the POB. And now I have 30% chance, which is obviously better. If you can't afford it, just get it. But that is enough. Like, we have chaining explosions. We have so much generic damage scaling from the golems, from the primordial bonds, that these do incredible amounts of damage by themselves. And then we scale so much AoE that life is good. And then a zero promise just for damage and some leech. Movement speed. I prefer the increased duration, not increased effect, because we're very fast anyway because of the shield charge attack speed. Granite Flask. I mentioned this, but I'll mention it again. Chance to free shock and ignite is a pretty good suffix. I think it's a suffix. Let's just say it's a suffix because it gives you chance to shock, and that gives you a bit more damage, which is not included in the POB, but just it's slightly unreliable, but it is there. And then for the last flask, you can go for a life flask, Cinder Swallow Urn for some energy shield on kill and some damage. You can go for Taste of Hate, which is a lot cheaper than Cinder Swallow. I think Cinder Swallow is the nicest thing to go for, especially if you want to drop a life flask. So I will keep that as the recommendation. That's about it for the endgame setup. I'm sorry that I'm going back and forth, but I'm trying to make it make sense why things are happening the way that they're happening. So obviously in the mid game, we don't go for the cracked perfect implicit shenanigans, and the conversion, you go for cheaper conversion. You can just take a Watcher's Eye that converts the leftover of your cold, of your physical damage to cold. It's very, very, very cheap, very nice. You just recombine the gloves, temple mod, combine that with life and accuracy, and then craft Fist Convert. A few attempts, but it should be very cheap. And then the boots, you just want to get a veiled movement speed with onslaught on kill if you don't have the onslaught on hit ring. If you have that, then 35% movement speed is better, technically. You know, just get resist, life, movement speed, whatever. Primordial Chain, Amulet, you can't really beat that. It's so good, so efficient. This is in the mid game, in the end game. It's cheap, good, valuable, efficient, great, life's good. Anyway, Circle of Guilt, onslaught on hit, buff effect is good. Physical damage increase while affected by the Herald is also good. Phys damage reduction is very nice. Lost Unity, I don't know what to tell you there. Get good rolls if you can. As good as you can. And then the Foulborn Headhunter, it's GG. It should be a priority. That's something that I should mention. The Foulborn Headhunter, that should be a priority. It does scale the damage on the single target by a lot. So, yeah. Feel free to look around the POB. The early game POB is obviously a lot weaker, but this is, like, it's nothing. There's nothing. Like, even the Primordial Chain is non-corrupted with a cheap enchant, just so you don't have to, you know, spend money on that. And then instead of the Explode Flask, you go for Foulborn Barracks Respite. You do lose quite a bit of AoE, but this was basically my early setup. That's what I was doing. Both work, technically. Either the Shaper of Flames, sorry, technically both work in terms of the rings. You can either get explode ignited enemies or explode shocked enemies. You just have to get proliferation for the correct thing. So on your gloves, like, you want to move out of these gloves into ignite proliferation if you're going for ignite explode, or shock proliferation if you're going for shock explode. And then that's about it. It works, it functions, it does acceptable damage. The way I leveled the build, I don't have a leveling POB because the way that you can level is you get to level 49 and then you equip your shield, your weapon, your herald ring, and Crimson gloves. You're blasting. You're golden. You're just shield charging, doing giga damage. If you have 20% quality on the shield. And then until level 49, what I did was I just went through spell damage here, or rather here, Ellie overload, life, reservation, herald stuff, damage, just random nodes all over the place. With wands, I did kinetic bolt until I can use power siphon, then I swapped to power siphon, and then I tried other skills, but power siphon felt the most satisfying to play. I leveled to 49, had a blast, and then started actually blasting with the build. And that's about it. So yeah, that's it. This is the build. That's the build guide. If you have any more questions, feel free to come to my Twitch channel. I will be streaming it, playing it, still upgrading it, still min-maxing it, still leveling it, still loving it. Okay, bye.